Hi, hello, how are you? I'm Pia and today I'm going to be doing my April wrap-up. During the month of April, I read 16 books. I had a lot of DNFs. I participated in the Owl's Magical Readathon and I completed all of the prompts. I've stretched all of the prompts, but I completed them. I'm just gonna go through all these books because obviously I have a lot to talk about. The first book that I read was actually a DNF, and that is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I read this book for my Reading Like Chelsea Doling Reads weekly reading vlog. I could not stand this book. I couldn't stand the love interest or the character. It was so utterly cheesy and I just needed to stop reading it. So unfortunately, I did put this down and it really wasn't my sort of thing. Luckily, I have found some other romances that work out better for me. This one just wasn't my thing. Then I read a romance book that I actually really liked, and that was The Right Swipe. This is about a woman who created a dating app. She is kind of out to become the biggest person in her field and she wants to buy out the old companies. Through this, she actually has to come into contact with this guy that she had like a one-night stand with. There's tension, there's drama. It's so good. I really liked this book a lot. I know it has a sequel. I just really liked the characters. I felt that they were very realistic, especially with their wants and needs in a relationship, and they were like both angry at each other because of miscommunication. I really liked the story we were following. I thought it was fresh and fun, and it was like not like other romances, because like a lot of romances can really be like literal like cardboard cutouts of the same thing over and over again. This one was different and I really enjoyed that. And I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. Today's emoji book rating is gonna be, is there a sushi emoji? It's gonna be a sushi emoji because I'm about to eat sushi and I'm really excited about it. Next up, I listened to another book on audio. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks recently, if you didn't know. I listened to An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This completed my challenge for the Owls of reading a book that's outside of your comfort zone, arithmancy prompt. I gave this a full 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book so much. It was outside my comfort zone because it's kind of sci-fi, but I loved that it was like about these strange things that appear in different cities all around the world, and the first one to document them is, her name is April May, and she becomes all sorts of famous because of it, and then she gets thrown into the mystery of it. So it's like you got mystery, you got sci-fi, and then you have contemporary of dealing with sudden fame and kind of being addicted to fame, which I found very interesting, especially with the YouTube aspects of it. And I really liked that none of the characters were really good. And like especially April May. I love when we have a protagonist that's morally gray, and I thought that the story was so interesting and fun. And the way this book ended, I literally died. I literally started crying because I just need to know what happens next. This does have a sequel, and again, I give this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. It's an absolutely remarkable thing. I think this is gonna be one of my new favorites. Then I had another DNF, and that is for Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. This is the second book that I've read by Mary H.K. Choi, and also the second book that I've DNF'd by her, so not exactly the best track record. I was ready to start this book because people liked it a lot more than Emergency Contact, which was her first book that had a really insensitive depression joke, and I was like, goodbye. But this one, I just hate it. Like, the characters, again, were insufferable. We just talked about how I love reading about, like, morally great characters and people that aren't just one thing and aren't just fantastically good, but, like, these characters were so annoying. Especially the male character, and I was done. I was done with it. I'm sorry. Next up, I read a comic or graphic novel, and this is Strange Planet. This is a collection of little comics that have been posted, I believe, on Twitter over the last little bit, and they're just about aliens discussing like normal things. And it's so cute and funny, and I really, really like this. I love the art style especially. I think it sheds a really interesting commentary on like these normal like day-to-day things that we go through, and just kind of like explaining them and having them make like no sense. It's like, why do we do that? So I really enjoyed that. I definitely want to own this book eventually. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun time, very quick and easy, and it was just very good. Next up, I read The Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. This is a debut novel that is set on a coastal town, and it is about a girl named Violet, I believe, who is returning to this town in Maine after her brother's suicide attempt. So obviously trigger warnings for that. It's kind of a mystery coming of age story. She's trying to find out how her family is linked to this town. Through that, she's also like discovering sexuality and exploring relationships, and you know, trying to recover from the effect that her and her brother's relationship has had on her, and just kind of trying to move forward and get through it. Pretty much really enjoyed this book for the most part, and then I kind of got bored with it. I don't really know what else to say about it. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars because I think that it was enjoyable and a nice read, but I don't think that it was anything that really stuck with me. And I think the problem is that I was mostly disappointed because I really thought that this was going to be like one of my all-time favorites, because it has the makings of like my favorite books, especially with mental health awareness and queer characters, but it kind of fell flat for me. Next up, for my read a book that's shorter than 150 pages, pages. The book is actually not shorter than 150 pages, but I read less than 150 pages of it, so I'm counting it. That is for the prompt of potions. I read Camp Spirit. This is a graphic novel that I got off Nightingale, and I was very excited about it because I wanted something quick and easy, and I love stories set around the summer. This, I DNF this, and I do not DNF like graphic novels because like they're short. They're not like, you can suffer through 100 pages or so. It was like everyone was a stereotype and they were nothing more. And I could not stand it. I didn't like the art style at all. I didn't like how the characters were acting or interacting. It just felt like literally like something that came out of 2009, and we're in 2020, so I'm over it. Next up, I read another graphic novel. I have a couple in succession. I read a graphic novel called Moonstruck. This is volume 1. This completed the prompt of herbology. Read a book that starts with M. Pretty much liked this. I really liked the art style, but it didn't get anything out of this. There are some graphic novels that I absolutely adore, like, but this one like had no effect on me whatsoever. I was just kind of reading it to like read it. It was like about werewolves and like I couldn't tell you much else. Next up, I read another graphic novel. This is actually a graphic memoir, and it's called Spinning by Tilly Walden. Tilly Walden is a very well-known graphic novelist. I really liked this book. I actually really liked the commentary on the culture of, it was centered around figure skating. So even though I've never figure skated, it really reminded me of like competitive dancing, and that is something that I've experienced. So the pressure and all the things that go into it that you don't really think about from the outside looking in is like, it's so much work. Like, and there are clicks and there's tension and there's all sorts of stuff, and I really like this. Again, I didn't rate this book. I'm trying to decide whether or not I like rating graphic novels just because there isn't much to a graphic novel, but at the same time I feel like some graphic novels do stand above others and I would like to give them rating. I'm not sure where I stand on it. Let me know down below if you guys rate graphic novels or how you rate them on a scale. I don't really understand how to yet. This also completed my prompt of charms because it is a white cover. Then I read another book on audio. This is a cute contemporary called I Want to Be Where You Are. This is about a ballerina. So she's an aspiring ballerina actually. She's trying to audition to study under this big ballet teacher guy, and she has to lie and she has to go on this road trip to get to the audition, but unfortunately her kind of nosy neighbor peeks his head in and finds out what she's doing and makes her take him to his dad's house. So they have this really interesting relationship. It's definitely very tense. Get hinted at that there was some sort of backstory with them. Something happened before that they were friends or something like that happened, but now they are absolutely not and they can't stand each other. I love books where like two people that like don't really like each other are like forced to be together, and I just found this very heartwarming. I thought it was very cute. Like, it had all the tropes that made me happy and it was a fun time. I really enjoyed my time reading this, and I don't read a lot of books about like ballerinas, so I thought that was cool. Next up, I read Ziggy Stardust and Me by James Brandon. This is a book about a kid who is dealing with his homosexuality in the 70s, which is a very repressive time for all the people in the LGBTQIA+ community. So he's getting like shock therapy to try to like force his gayness out of him, which like the fuck. And he meets this new boy, and it's like over the summer and they have a romance, but it's also just dealing with the dark topics of the 70s of all this shit that's going down, like anti-war, great music, but especially dealing with the immense problems that there are with people who view the gay community as like terrible. So it's very hard to read, but I think it's a very important read and definitely a book that I haven't heard anyone talk about. I love the setting of the 70s especially because I think that's a time that I love music from, I love the style from, but I don't really know a lot about the pop culture, and I feel like this really shone a light on that. And also I really liked that the antagonist in this book, or at least one of them, I guess you could call society the antagonist in this, but one of the antagonists is a very morally gray character. He's not like absolutely pure evil, and I of course love the development in character. So I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's a fantastic book and I think a lot of people should read it. This completed my prompt of random number generator prompt. That was divination, and this also was my prompt for Muggle studies, though I could put that for literally any of the other contemporaries I read. Next up, I read Rubbery. This is completing the prompt of a book with beaks on the cover. I think that's Care for Magical Creatures. Oh, and Ancient Runes. Do I remember what Ancient Runes prompt was? Alrighty, this is a book about different kind of worlds within your dreams. They are called reveries, and this group of people are trying to kind of save people from the reveries because they can basically turn into nightmares and that could get you killed. And they're very dangerous, so they're trying to close up all these reveries for people so that they can stay safe. We follow our main character named Kane, who recently woke up and completely lost his memory of all the day's events. He was in like a car accident, he was found in a lake, and he does not remember anything about it. Someone died and he has not a scratch much on him or memory. It's a really good book. If you like Strange the Dreamer or Star of the Sea, I really would recommend this book, especially like you can tell from the cover that's kind of what they're going for. I unfortunately didn't like this as much as those other books. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I found it really fun and enjoyable. I really liked that there's also a male romance at the forefront of the story. Overall, I just felt like I didn't really fully comprehend the magic system, and that was kind of what was lacking there, especially for a fantasy. I really need to understand what's going on. So I was a little bit confused through this book, but I still think it was a fun time. Next up, I read Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the second book in the Morgan Crow series. I read Nevermore in October, I want to say, or September, something like that. I ended up enjoying this a little bit less. I can't really tell you the plot of it because it's a sequel, but it is following a magic school. I definitely think I'm going to continue with the series, but this one, it just fell a little flat for me. I felt like it was long and I just wasn't really invested in it, and I wasn't having as fun of a time. It wasn't as fast paced and things like that. So I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. I think I give the first book either 4 or 5 stars. I definitely want to continue with the series and see what else is going to happen with all sorts of hijinks with these characters, but this one just kind of was middle book syndrome, you know? This completed my prompt of This Is Me Stretching a Prompt, History of Magic. Although there aren't explicitly like witches or wizards in this book, I'm gonna call them witches because they have gifts and like powers, and I don't care. Next up, I listened to The Bear and the Nightingale on audio by Catherine Arden. I really liked this book and I was super pleasantly surprised by it. You guys were telling me that you really liked it and you thought I would, but I was very hesitant, especially since this is something that I don't really read a lot of. This is a fantasy that's inspired by Russian folklore, and it's super interesting, and I just really was intrigued by this the whole time. It follows a young girl who is a witch. Oh, this has witches! Never mind, this has witches. That can complete that prompt. So she's kind of ostracized, and in this time, people are just like marrying off their 13-year-old daughters, and she's like, I don't want to get married. Like, I'm just gonna play around in the forest, and there's like magical forest creatures, and there's like evil creatures too that are trying to like run away, or like, and they're trying to like kill people. It's a whole thing. I'm not explaining this to my best ability. It's so cozy, like, as much as I'm like, oh, they're trying to kill people, like, and there's demons, like, it's a very cozy read just because of the atmosphere and the setting and the language that's used. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I was so pleasantly surprised, and now I know that I can binge the rest of the series. The next book I read was Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. This is the last book in the Dark Artifices series. I have nothing to tell you about this book. I was reading it and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not into this as much as the other books, and then Cassandra Clare made me feel every emotion in my body. I'm Shadowhunter trash. Like, I can't stop reading these books. I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. I love the Shadowhunter world. I love my babies. And then lastly, I listened to another book on audio, and that was The Bromance Book Club by Alicia K. Adams. I love this book. This I picked up on a whim because I'm trying to get back into romance. I think I read a couple romances this month, but I'm trying to like actually read them because like usually I skip over things. This is a book about baseball players, and one baseball player in particular is trying to fix his marriage with his wife, and he finds out that all of his baseball player friends have this book club where they read romance books to repair their marriages and to learn how to treat a woman right. And it's so good. I really liked it. I thought it was very different than other romances where we have an already established relationship and trying to kind of repair that and mend that and move it forward, rather than establishing a relationship and kind of being the goal of the book. So I really like that. This is a whole series. I cannot wait to read all of them about all the different baseball players. There's fun drama. It's very funny as well. Super heartwarming. I loved our female main character. She was so strong and badass, and she was like, I'm not gonna do anything for you, like follow my rules. And we love sharing insecurities and like having a healthy relationship. Like, all guys should take notes from this book. I give that 4 out of 5 stars. Did I tell you? I don't know. Anyway guys, those are all the books that I read in April. I'm sorry this video was so long because I read so many books. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys read in April. If you've read any of these books and have some thoughts, leave them down below. Yeah, with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!